Every year I reflect back on what's happened to the gaming industry in the past 365 days. What trends have caught on and which have died out. Where things were looking to go and where they actually went. Who screwed up, who tried to take from us, and who did their best to give to us. Who was fair and who was corrupt. 2018 has been one of the more interesting years for our industry. It's been a combination of good and bad, happy and sad. There have been amazing games, in fact, some of the best ever put out in my opinion. But they've been beset by throngs of crappy ones too. And some games that should have been great, yet for whatever reason, be it greed, stupidity, silliness, took a nosedive into the dirt faster than an airplane going Mayday. So let's take a look at gaming in 2018, as one day we'll be looking back on it as history. One fact that is immediately apparent when taking a look back this year is the sheer amount of industry-defining, blockbuster games that have come out. We're talking about games that have the potential to be remembered for years to come. Spider-Man, God of War, and Red Dead Redemption 2 for me stick out most notably.
Okay, we're going?
No, hold on. Wait till she's got him reeled in.
Spider-Man for showing us that superhero games don't have to suck, the latter two being notably stunning and all of them being primarily single player, and that's really important. These three games were the most I enjoyed this year, and I think they'd stand up to any other three games released in just about any other year. I also spent a good chunk of time playing the remaster of Shadow of the Colossus, which is fantastic, and Detroit Become Human. I'm primarily a PC gamer, and I have to admit I spent just as much time on my PlayStation 4 this year participating in first-party or console exclusives, whether they were timed limited or not. The sheer amount of love, profit, and goodwill that these three games generated proves that games don't necessarily need multiplayer components, open worlds, in-game stores, or extensions to fill in content that was missing from the onset. But the endless need to cram each and every one of them into each and every game in order to create the most perfect or marketable game, quote unquote, is one of the biggest fallacies in games today. A game only needs to be great to be successful, and these games prove it. One of the big pushes in 2017 was this notion that single-player games don't have the staying power in the industry as development costs continue to rise. Every game doesn't have to cost $100 million to make it if it's not aiming to generate money in excess of that amount. Cheaper games on the indie front show that this is most certainly the case. Outside the AAA market, there have been some awesome surprise hits this year, including one of my favorite new games to play called Dusk. It's a retro-style shooter that harkens back to the good old days of collecting keys and has some of the best controls on the market. You should look into it if you like Doom. A few other low-tier games that impressed the hell out of me were Gris, Tetris Effect, Into the Breach, that just warms my FTL heart, Iconoclasts, why is that so hard to say by the way, and Return of the Obra Dinn, to name only a few. Return of the Obra Dinn is particularly close to my heart because I loved Papers, Please, and this cross between monochrome hand novel and Sudoku puzzle make it a combination that's hard to put down. It's so interesting and it has some of the most elegant music for a $20 game. Go pick it up right now if you don't have it. Now, Gris is fairly new, and if you haven't seen it yet, you're missing a work of art in motion. Trust me, every frame of this game could be a picture in an art gallery. At 3 hours, it's pretty short, but it's well worth the playthrough for someone looking for something on the relaxing side. There are dozens of other fantastic games that released this year, from Monster Hunter World to the new Forza, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Ni no Kuni 2, loved it, to cheap games like Florence on mobile and Celeste for the price of a few coffees at Starbucks. All of these games are amazing. What does it mean? It means that any game on the market at any price point has an audience if the game is simply good. And that's the takeaway for 2018, just make a good game. That's all you have to do. It's unfortunate that so many of these games may have already been forgotten in the shadow of more morally bankrupt and or crappy titles. Yep, I'm referring to the big disappointments of the year. Many games released in 2018 have been horrible, but it's the disappointing ones that sting the most. Games that should have been great, but for one reason or another, just missed the mark. Some of them a lot more than the rest. If you enjoyed these games, that's great. This is only my opinion after all. I personally felt most let down by the following games. Fallout 76. Duh. Bethesda shoveled out Fallout 76 to the market in a state of an under-ripened turd, one that fell down from the ugly tree and hit every branch on the way down. There it lay, baking in the hot, toasty sun, where Bethesda then picked it up and offered it to the market for a price no less than $60. Stripped of everything that made Fallout great, it quickly came under fire as one of the crappiest games of the year. An obvious, low-effort cash grab to take advantage of the holiday season and the flavor of the month in the form of survival. No NPCs, no proper storytelling, a busted PvP system that made no sense, and for those compelled to see the game to conclusion, a huge amount of in-game grinding. Just no. Have you ever dreamed of picking up a full-price basketball game full of microtransactions, cheaters, hackers, insanely stupid game mechanics, bugs, glitches, lag, bad matchmaking, and supernatural AI? Well, great. Go ahead and pick up NBA 2K19. When one of the best things about your game is that you can skip the cutscenes in My Career, you've got a serious problem. Metal Gear Survive. It's not a terrible game, I just didn't see the point. Why not use the resources to make a proper Metal Gear game instead of once again chase the flavor of the month? Darksiders 3, again, chasing trends for the wrong reasons. I was a huge fan of the original two Darksiders games, especially Darksiders 2. Ditching the expansiveness of D2 to copy a lot of stuff in Dark Souls, yet ironically didn't understand why those elements were actually good in the first place. Without a compelling sense of customization, a loot progression, or skills, or weapons, it just didn't make much sense. Especially seeing as how they could have just built upon the Zelda-esque thing that they had going on with D2, which was really good. But instead they hopped on the Souls train. I also thought State of Decay 2 and The Crew 2 were pretty underwhelming and disappointing as well. But at least most of these games were actually finished when they came out. The real problem of 2018 has been the overabundance of incomplete video games, regardless if they were disappointing or not. For as much as I love to play Battlefield 5, I've got some serious unfinished business with this game. One of my biggest regrets in my review was not ragging on the incomplete nature of it as much as I did. 75% of a single-player campaign, no practice mode, missing vehicle customizations, and the omission of Battle Royale, which is included in the base version of the game that we pay for, but for some reason we have to wait 6 months for it? Think about that. We paid for a mode that we cannot play. Let that sink in for a second. BF5 is simply the pizza you ordered and only half of it gets delivered. You pay for it now though, you tip the driver, but he's gonna come back next month with the rest of it. We can only assume this happened because EA is basically overworking DICE, a company forced to pump out a Battlefront or Battlefield game nearly every year, and 12 months of DLC while working on their next project. If you charge me full price for a video game, it should be complete at launch no matter what. I don't care if you're gonna add it in later. You charged me today. Why Battlefield 5 is disappointing is because it deserved better, but instead is quickly turning into EA's slickest incomplete live gaming experience that, don't worry, will only get better with time. That just doesn't fly for me when I've already dropped the money and I'm wanting to play the game now. The other incomplete game that was dumped to the markets was Sea of Thieves. Oh, Sea of Thieves is everything wrong in gaming. It's a brand new IP made by a once great developer, but pushed out the door with A, a laughable amount of content, and B, misleading marketing, and C, for a whopping $60. Upon release, there was very little to do in this game. You simply accept a quest, sail to an island, dig up a treasure, put it on your ship, and go back home. You turn it in, and that's pretty much it. I've got no idea what Sea of Thieves turned into because I never bothered to reinstall it, but what I do know is that it doesn't really matter. Games should be done at launch if you have the stones to charge $60, no questions asked. If you want to give me 60% of the game, then you deserve 60% of the asking price. I'll pay you the rest when you give me the rest of the goddamn game. When you start to crack into this issue of incomplete releases, you kinda open up a can of worms though, don't you? At what point is the game really finished? If every game can be added to later on, when should a game actually be released? At what point is Anthem ready? A certain amount of quality control just needs to be expected, I think, especially with companies like Bethesda, because if enterprises refuse to invest the resources to acquire it, it's up to the consumer. Thankfully today, consumers have more power than ever thanks to the organizational nature of the World Wide Web. We've come together to protest and help change the industry in some great ways, not the least of which to steer the ill-informed away from the malicious and the predation. We've been able to promote more crossplay with Sony and help Nintendo finally come to the realization to end their horrible Nintendo Creators Program. Companies like Bethesda releasing Fallout 76 in its poop-like state now suffer the consequences of horrendous sales, all because we are vocal. The fact is, the industry is changing so much. EA's stock price is in the toilet because we have the power to inform people about what's going on a mass scale, and companies can no longer hide from the critique, just like Activision Blizzard. A few years ago, they could get away with a lot more shit than they can now, and I'm proud to be able to speak out about games so that we are treated with the respect that $60 demands. But the greatest part is, we can also promote the best of the industry, like getting Kratos' new adventure into the hands of people who wouldn't normally try it, or showcasing an awesome co-op game like Overcooked 2 to those that might not even know it existed. Making video games today isn't what it used to be. There's a lot more competition, but that also means that when a game does shine, it shines above more games than ever before. 2018 saw a few of those games. It saw just as many incomplete ones as well though, and disappointing titles too.
Only us.
For me, overall though, it's been a great year in gaming and I can't wait to see what next year brings us. Microsoft needs to release more games. I think they had a pretty bad year. I think PUBG might continue to see its player base decline in the face of more competition, and I'm hoping we get some news for new consoles next year. So where are we headed next year? It seems like that might be up in the air, but really anything is possible. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Of course though, there's been a lot of other stuff that's happened in the gaming industry this year, including Telltale Games going bankrupt because of bad management. That's a completely different subject for, I guess, another video. Then we also had various rumors of institutions, most certainly spearheaded by Rockstar Games, of employees being worked to death to make the video games that we play. And I don't think that's a great thing to hear, especially when employees are not treated properly, which is a great segue to talk about workplace leadership. As many of you guys know, Riot Games this year was accused of basically being sexually inappropriate in the workplace, especially towards females, and that's not good either. And last but not least, we had the ongoing debates of loot boxes, and currently as it stands right now, it's up in the air, but looking pretty good in terms of like making our games more safe for people underage, which is good. But beyond those things, there was so many controversies and conflicts and stuff happening in the gaming industry this year. I think maybe we could talk about it more in the comment section of the video because I have to stop this video at some point, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was impossible for me to cover everything that happened this year in this video, so let me know once again down below in the comment section what you thought of 2018. Thanks for watching guys, I hope to see you in our next video. Peace, love, and happiness until then.